Welcome to the Payment Shed podcast, the weekly podcast that dives into the big topics, trends, and people shaping the worlds of payments, fintech, and business leadership, with your two co-hosts, myself, Grant Evans, and Justin Hanna. Welcome to another episode of the Payment Shed podcast. Today we are joined by Luke Earry and Gary Burns from Howyadoing. Guys, welcome to the show. Please, can we get an introduction to yourselves? I'm very interested in finding out how you met and a little bit about the foundation of Howyadoing and what the business does.
Yeah, look, so I'll start. So thank you for having us, obviously, avid listener. So we are Howyadoing. We're a talent as a service firm. My kind of background, so I live in London, I'm in Kingston, and my background is 15 years in payments and banking. And but recently, 6-7 months ago, set up my own business with Gary. And we kind of transitioned into people and trying to tackle the world of payments and people in kind of one solution. And yeah, loving it at the moment. But I think before I dive too much into the business and talk about what we do, it's probably fair because otherwise I do tend to go on tangent. So let Gary intro himself and maybe explain how we met.
Yeah, thank you for that, Luke. Great to be
Sounds
here.
very romantic, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us as well. It's great to be here. I'm Gary. I've spent over 15 years working in talent acquisition. I actually met Luke when I tried to recruit him, which then led to Luke saying I was the best recruiter he'd ever worked with. And we kept in touch, became friends. Whenever I was in London for business, I would meet Luke for coffee or a drink, and sort of just spawned the idea of bringing Luke's experience in terms of delivery around the payment sector and my experience of building successful teams together to go into payments and fintech and help businesses from a different angle and a new approach to really scale and bring in great people.
Yeah, and I think it's like when you look at the industry, I saw that a big hole in the market, right? Which is even people that say they've been in payments for 15 years as a talent acquisition, they've never actually delivered a product. They've never sat in a product team. They've never spoken to the end customer. So when you're a specialist, I always thought, what are you the specialist of? Well, you're the specialist of the people. And I thought there's a big gap in the market here, right? Where actually, if you've got someone that's spoken to the end customer, knows what they want, and they've done the day-to-day, not the glitz and glamour, the grinding out day-to-day, if you combine that knowledge of doing it with the kind of talent, it would be a strong proposition and kind of, I don't want to call it recruitment 2.0 because it's a bit corny, but it's just doing recruitment in a different way. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later with AI and stuff, but I kind of see it kind of diverging. So, yeah.
I think it's just an interesting notion of, I know, Gary, you've worked in payments as well, albeit more time in the talent acquisition world, but having that experience of a sector that you're then actually recruiting into is really lacking in the market as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we get that feedback with the podcast. Obviously, we work in industry and we're sitting down with people from fintech and payments, but we work in fintech and payments, so we know the subject matter and we do get very positive feedback. So I'm interested to see where you guys take the business, because I just don't think there's anyone doing what you guys are really, where they've got that industry experience.
I've definitely had recruiters call me before and say, I'm working with an up-and-coming PF. Tell me what PF is. They're really like payments today. They're taking X amount of investment. What does that actually mean? What are they selling and why are they selling it, right? As opposed to looking through someone's CV and throwing it against 1,000 other CVs, right? So I think from your perspective, you'd be able to weed out a lot of people by having a conversation to understand their knowledge.
Yeah, and I think, look, the 100% on that, but I also think there's the element of, and I'm sure we've all been approached by recruiters, right, where actually they also would try and coach you into the role. So they're trying to make, a square fit in a circle and then tell the client you're the perfect circle. Where our kind of view is we take a different approach. So we're very much on the side of the client. We're very transparent with our candidates, but we try to make the perfect square fit the perfect square. And if we can't, we then tell the client it's not about making the wrong person in the wrong role, because especially we do a lot of founders that are scaling. And if you get the wrong person in for 6 months, that's a lot of cash burn. That's a lot of pain to do it. So it's better just to be honest. So I think our approach, to the best of our knowledge, I don't know anyone doing it. There might be someone else, so someone else might comment on it, and I think that's probably why we're quite unique. And the feedback we get from founders themselves being able to have that, similar to you guys, right? That's why we listen to the podcast, is to have the organic conversation where you actually are both subject matter experts. I think founders that we're dealing with like the fact that first they get the subject matter expert about their product, and then we then hand it over to maybe they're the subject matter that they don't have, which is hiring the best people, where then we can then hand it over to Gary, and then it adds the extra layer of value instead of being the only layer of value. Does that make sense?
And Gary, from your perspective, how have you seen this differ from maybe your career in recruitment before around this kind of view on it?
I think the different approach that we take is challenges the stigma that's existed with recruitment for years, where it is, as you said, CVs been flung and people who don't really understand their client or understand the role. For me, having worked in payments and worked in fintech, it was all about understanding the hiring manager, the team, the role, and the company, so that you can make the right connect. And sometimes you have to have difficult conversations and say this may take a week or two longer, but in the long run, that's a drop in the bucket, because we'll get the right person. And 6 months down the line, you'll forget that it took 2 weeks longer. It's about finding the right people at the right time for the right role. And a lot of recruiters out there in the traditional sense forget that. They just, as Luke said, it's a square peg in a round hole because they just want to get paid. For us, it's about making the right fit for that long-lasting success for our clients. So I think for us is Howyadoing. It's about challenging that and bringing the fresh approach where we understand at a deeper level the payment sector, the companies, the roles. We've got a guy here that's worked in a lot of the roles and delivered success. And then myself, I've built successful teams worldwide to deliver in that space as well. So if you bring that together, we can challenge the status quo, if you will.
You were more in a product capacity previously in payments. What was your role in the payments industry?
It was in talent acquisition.
It was
working across roles. So everything from product marketing through to revenue generation as well.
And what made you get to that decision of flipping from in-house to I'm going to go and do this myself, my way?
Other than the opportunity to work with Luke on a day-to-day basis. I would say, I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. I think when you work in talent acquisition or recruitment on an agency side, you kind of run your own desk, and it's about like running your own business anyway. I worked internal for a number of years, built up a real passion for payments and fintech from that experience, but the thought was always there that I could and wanted to run my own business where we do it my way, where we focus on relationships, we focus on people to a very deep level, and it's about building those connections. So when I spoke to Luke, and Luke was thinking about coming out of sales and coming into the placement world, it just seemed like such a natural fit. We know each other well, we've almost worked together in the past, and it just seemed like bringing Luke's experience alongside mine, we would bring something to the market that's new. It's not two traditional recruiters setting up their own business. It's a payments expert and a talent acquisition expert coming together, and I think it's 5 months in, a powerful proposition.
And for you, Luke, what was the kind of the moment you thought, I need to get out of this world? I like payments, I like sales, but I really like recruitment. Was it like an event or?
No, there was one thing that happened. So I think there was two elements to it, right? I've always been passionate about payments, but more I'm passionate about people. So in all of my jobs, I've had mentoring schemes where I've tried to help people. And so the people development is more fun than the payments. Payments is just interesting, right? But I'd probably say that the main part, which was, the guy doesn't even know this, but I went on a interview that a recruitment had put me on with, and I was actually speaking to a former managing director that I knew personally. And he was like, the role's not right for you. And I was like, the role is not right for me. And he kind of had a chat with me and said, look, you could do a lot. You just need to work out where it was. And then, when it just hits you, I was like, hang on a minute. I'm speaking to people I shouldn't be because I've been pushed here. There is a issue that I can resolve, and all good businesses start by fixing an issue. So I got off that call and literally just called up Gary about 2 minutes later and said, why don't we set up a recruitment firm, talent as a service, as I like to call it. But anyway, why don't we set up a firm and do something different? And the different is we actually know what we're talking about from the payment space. And how can we lose? If you're a normal recruiter, you can say, I've done this for 15 years. And then you speak to us and go, I've spoken to your end client. I've launched your product. I've sold your product. Oh, and Gary has been talent for 15 years. So when you just look at the two options, why would you go with option one when you have option two? It's so natural. So then create a business, called him up. 2 hours later, it was, all right, let's give this a go.
Nice.
How has your payments experience kind of influenced the way you now approach your recruitment?
Massively. So I think a lot of recruiters are sprinting we don't sprint. One of the things I said to Gary is we're going to split the business in two. So the business is business development, which is me, and then it is talent. So I open the door, Gary closes the door. And I said, I don't want to sprint. I don't want one-term contracts. I want multiple contracts from one person. So we're going to take more of an enterprise level approach to it, which is it might take us 3 months or 6 months to get a client, but then we'll keep them for years. So that helped. I also think really importantly, payments and recruitment are actually more simple and more similar than you think. And similar to payments, if I sold you a gateway today, until payments start going through it and I get my gateway fee, I'm not getting paid. It's a cost for me to run that. In recruitment, if I sign you and you don't give me any actual people to recruit, I don't get paid. So it is that secondary reward. So put the enterprise level over it, remove the sprint, and then kind of put in that secondary reward. That it was quite actually easy to transition over.
No, I think many people have had bad experiences with the recruiters, right? And sometimes it does tarnish maybe some businesses that are doing the right things. And on the flip side of that, it can be frustrating for recruiters when you've got people that are applying for 100 million jobs at the same time because they're not happy, right?
Yeah.
What do you kind of think are the biggest pain points out there right now for candidates?
For candidates, I think, as you touched on, it's getting feedback. You shouldn't have to apply for 1 million jobs. I think if you know your worth and you know what you want to do, and a lot of candidates don't, and they need to have that conversation, and that's where we do that as well. It's almost like, we're a council. Come and have a chat with us, and I'll talk to people and say, where do you want to be in the next 2 to 5 years? What do you want this step to achieve in your journey? So that you're clear on what that looks like. And I'll be honest, if the role with us isn't going to help them get there, we'll say this isn't the right thing for you just now. So I think candidates need to be honest with themselves about what they actually want to do and where they want to go to. I think the other big pain point is not getting feedback. There's a lot of recruiters out there that the bad reputation has came from bad practice over the years, let's be honest. It takes 2 minutes to phone someone, have a connect with them, tell them why they've been unsuccessful, give them some feedback and wish them well moving forward. But a lot of people, it's a transactional outcome that they're looking at. They want to just, again, fill the role and move on. For us, it's not about that. Luke's saying about with clients, it's about building a relationship for the long term. Well, for me, it's the same with candidates because it's people. I want to be with someone to place them, and if they move again, we can work with them then and be part of their journey, because changing job is part of someone's journey in life as well. And we play a big part in that. So we want to give them the counsel and the support that they need. So I think people need to be secure in what they want and then speak to people that they can trust to help them get to where they want to be to. I think that could address a lot of the issues candidates are seeing.
I think that's like an issue with the employers, but I think recruitment companies have certainly been culpable of that in the past as well. I mean, I've had experiences definitely with recruiters where, and I don't know if it's because they were having multiple candidates that they were putting forward for a role, and it's like horses that they're backing, right? And one horse is winning the race. But I've certainly had the ghosting from in companies I've applied to directly and from recruiters as well in the middle.
I think there's two issues, right? One, I think is inexperience, right? I think from the recruiter side, like it's short-sightedness, back to that sprint, okay? But two, I guess the kind of harsh honesty as well is if you've got a recruiter that doesn't understand the job and they don't understand the outcome, it's hard for that recruiter to give you genuine feedback. So it's sometimes, even if you're going to get the feedback, all they're going to say is, you came really close, you were good, there was just someone picked you. There's no actual valuable feedback there.
Rather speaks to the hiring manager.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Why?
So it's like, we've rejected someone recently because of their tender experience. They told us that they'd led tenders. When we actually spoke to them, they were part of the tender team. They didn't lead the tender. So when we gave feedback, we said, we're actually looking for a lead, someone that's delivered more within it. So that person went, great, now I know in the next couple of ones that I do at work, I will own the process instead of being part of it. Most recruiters aren't going to really know what a tender process goes into. So I think it's exactly as Gary said, I think it's experience, I think it's caring, but I also think there's an element of what feedback can you give if you don't understand it.
Where do you think AI has, I know I don't want to talk about AI all the time, right? But the reason why I say it is that a lot of people apply for roles and then they're chucked out of the process immediately because their CV or resume doesn't fit what the business says it's looking for according to some random AI system, right? And I've seen people, and I've spoken to people who said, I've applied for that job. It's the job that I do. and have not got through to the next round?
So look, I've got a bit of a bugbear with AI, right, in recruitment. So I think AI has a place at maybe more junior levels where it's less technical, and you know, you've got more letterbox recruiters who are just CV sifters, and it helps them. My biggest issue is, and you guys will know this because you're in industry as well. Before, if I had a role, there's probably 5 candidates in London that would just smash the role, okay? And I had 50 people apply. Well, now because of AI, I've now got 5 people that would smash the role and 300 people apply. The AI masks the quality. It doesn't improve the quality of the actual candidate. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I can imagine for some HR teams, it's an absolute war zone out there. So their next natural thing to do is they're now implementing AI. So you now have AI helps with the CV, AI helps with the actual application, AI screens it, AI shortlists it. And if you think the 5 people out of the 500 are all going to get through the AI screening, they won't, to your point, right? The person who's doing the role has been screened out. Yeah, it's stupid, but you are seeing more and more of that. I think we even looked at a role the other day. We were going to reach out to a client, and I said, wow, they've posted up a role and they've had 384 candidates in 24 hours. Now, 2 things can happen from that. The business can be arrogant about it and go, well, look how many candidates we have. We don't need your help. Or they can be realistic and go, can I find a needle in a haystack? Because if I can't, I'm going to need somebody else. I can't just post a job advert on LinkedIn.
This is a rumour, so no, might not be statistical, but please don't hold me to it. It's only my opinion from what I've heard. Stripe last year had nearly 990,000 applications on their jobs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But you can believe it as well, right?
I can believe it. But funny enough, like, I also know people that got a job at Stripe through the network, right? Through reaching out via their network. They know a hiring manager. They've gone out for coffee and they can show that they've delivered the role multiple times in other places. So then they will be maybe shortlisted. They don't get the job, but there's a shortlist that gets them past the initial AI kind of... I don't want to say slop because that's what they all call it, but it is a lot of...
But you also now have some businesses are now bringing in AI robots to do the first interview, right?
Yeah.
So you're literally speaking to a bot.
Yeah, and I think the biggest advocates for that are the companies themselves.
Yeah.
I see a lot of these AI companies using that with the digital face in front of it, and they're the ones going, oh, we've done this, we've done that. Very rarely am I actually seeing clients come out and say, wow, this has really helped our process. It's... you know, we should probably do it more where I just go out and start patting myself on the back for what I've done. But yeah,
I think Stripe need the screening as well. I mean, they've got, from experience, got to the last round, lost out to an internal candidate. Their loss.
That's what
they missed out. They missed out.
Recruiter told you.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, they've got a very long recruitment process, right? I think, 4 or 5 rounds. And the last day I had there, this is going back a fair few years, but I had like 7 interviews on the final day.
Don't get Gary started on...
It's a big bugbear of mine.
Oh, okay.
I think, putting people through that, I don't know how you felt going through that, but you lose so much connection and touch. It just becomes an arduous process that you feel you need to complete because you've started, like climbing a mountain.
The bit I like that they did do, though, and, I've probably taken this into hiring in my own teams since then, is they had different people from different departments interview. So it wasn't just the commercial team interviewing you in the commercial capacity. You had the marketing team, you had someone from the product team, and that was really driving that cultural narrative of you're going to be working with these people in these different departments day to day. Do they see you as a fit for the wider business unit?
That's good for you as well, though, because it gives you the opportunity to see the wider business rather than maybe you meet 2 people. You meet the person who's going to be your line manager, maybe 1 person from the team or 1 person more senior. You then meet people from product, marketing, finance, and you get to see what the broader culture of the business is like. So you're going in more aware of what that is rather than just what your team's going to be like. And then you get there and you're like, actually, as a wider business, this doesn't align with me.
Still not a big fan of. Like, I think you could do that over 2 interviews, and then the closing interview being the 3rd one.
I had to do role plays and all sorts. I've had to do very. I could tell you some stories.
The thing I'd take out of interviews, role plays is something I would take out of any interview process. Personally, on my experience in going for roles.
One thing as well that still gets used, for example, is deliver a PowerPoint presentation. And how often do people do that day to day? Very rarely. It's like, okay, so if you take a sales role, for example, what's more likely to happen is they'll have to sit down in front of a client and speak to them for 15 minutes. Why don't you have a round table where the candidate leads a discussion? This is us maybe giving away some of our secret sauce, but that's something I'm a big advocate for, and it's worked really well in the previous 2-3 companies I've worked with. We implemented that in sales hiring, where it would usually be the second stage. They would come in and lead a discussion, and it's what they're doing day to day, because they're going on a client site and they're sitting down and they're raising a subject and they're taking it through to a conclusion, and it's a conversation rather than someone standing up in a room pointing at a screen for 20 minutes and going through their PowerPoint. I'll
tell you one of the best situational ones. We are segueing. I think this is a good story, and Sarah Savage, my old boss, has been on the show recently as well. But when I interviewed with Allied Irish Bank, I did end up getting this job, but they flew me over to Dublin, and I was told, I think the day before that, in fact, no, I wasn't even told the day before I got there, and Sarah and the HR manager came in. They said, right, we're going to give you half an hour. It's going to be a role play scenario, and they're very big in airlines, or they certainly were back then. And they had their kind of airline brochure for Allied Irish Bank from the last trade show they'd gone to in that year. They're like, you can read through this. The situation is, we're selling to Turkish Airlines. You've been stranded in Istanbul, and the head of payments for Turkish Airlines has given you a 30-minute meeting slot to go and pitch.
So realistic.
But then they were like, don't make it too payments detail oriented. It's just 2 people, and you've got a 30-minute slot to get a follow-up meeting off the back of it, right? And I literally they walked out the room, and I was like, oh crap, I've got 30 minutes to do this role play scenario. But it really got me thinking, and reading about the product, and you're pulling out, you couldn't be too technical from a payments point of view, but what are the lures that were going to interest Turkish Airlines in potentially adding Allied Irish Bank Merchant Services to their ecosystem? So I quite enjoyed that.
I'll give him a shout out. So Mitch Powers is one of my old bosses, and me and him were discussing it. And to your point about the PowerPoints, right? He had a very clear view, which is don't take a PowerPoint straight away, because what you're doing is you're selling your service. That is not important on the start. What is on the call, and as he stressed to me more and more, is discovery. You want to learn as much about not only the client, but the person you're speaking with. Take that away, and then you create them a pitch which is wholly unique to them, where too many times you see, especially in large organizations, they go, okay, this is March's pitch external, and then marketing have dealt with it. There's not been a lot of input, and before you know it, you're telling. You're not coaching, you're not selling, you're telling. And you sit there, and I've done it with maybe salespeople haven't been as good, and you're looking at the client totally glazed over, thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's just a sales pitch, right?
Exactly.
I think that's where we talk about consultancy across kind of in the talent world, but actually we do it in sales all the time, right? You're just asking people question after question, so you understand exactly what challenges they're having. And I actually went for an interview at a huge, I'm not going to say the name, but a huge provider, and during the call there was 5 minutes left. Said, look, we're just going to do a quick role play. I own a shop on the high street. I want to move to an e-com website. Explain to me why I would do it. And my words were, I'm not doing a role play because this is a senior enterprise sales role. I would never be having conversations with someone on the high street who just wanted to open up a website. Why am I moving? Yeah. So I think it's really powerful. I think as someone applying for a role is, don't just say yes because you think you want that job. And I've interviewed people before, and actually someone I've hired before, the reason why he was so good at interviewing, he counted me every single time. So every time I asked a question, he was basically saying, why are you asking that question? But in a different way. So I was having to explain why I was trying to get him to come in for the role.
In an interview that I've had to do, so I did a similar thing, maybe not so much countering, but the person interviewing me didn't have the experience in payments. Yeah. So they were reading the question to me, and I said to them, look, this would never happen. Yeah. Let me answer the question in a different way. So we'll change the client type, we'll change it, but we'll follow the same logic of why would they switch to us? What value can we add? And let's actually make it an actual customer that we want, someone that fits in our ICP, not just, to your point. I think mine was a travel provider as well, actually, but it was a really micro one and we were going like 2 markets, and we were like they were a 28 market provider. And I was like, why would you even pitch to this client normally? It's like, no, we go larger. I go, well, give us an example then that's relevant, right? So
do you think there's some outdated habits then and attitudes that maybe people still hold when they're speaking and trying to recruit?
Absolutely. I think there's a traditional mindset about questions you need to ask. You need to ask situational questions, you need to ask competency questions, and you aren't getting to the crux of the matter. You're not looking at the skills, you're not looking at the experience, you're not looking at the knowledge enough. I think it can be lazy, or it's maybe just a lack of awareness, to keep using the same way. We're going to do a 5-stage interview process because we've always done that.
Can I call one out? The 90-day plan.
Yeah,
The 90-day plan.
We've been sent so many 90-day plans as well. And I go, we don't share this with clients, just so you know, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to speak with a founder, the founder's going to expect you to talk about revenue and revenue generation, or what you can deliver. Or if your product, not what the roadmap you've delivered, what actual things you've created in the market, right? I think, there's a lot of outdated
I'm guilty because
practices.
I've asked people for 90-day plans.
Do you read them?
No.
Well,
Well,
no.
I maybe I would read them, but it makes no impact on my end decision.
Yeah.
What does?
I'll tell you exactly what does. And Grant and I have hired someone before, and during the day we interviewed 3 or 4 people, and there was one person that had the most experience for that role, right? He had the most experience for the role on paper, and he come in and we just got, can you say a vibe? A vibe. Like, is this person meant to fit in culture into this business and really get a grip and roll the sleeves of what we're trying to do?
The other thing was, would we buy from this person?
Would we
And it
buy
was
from
a
him?
big fat no. And actually the hiring manager was staggered that we hadn't liked the candidate, and we were like, you had to be in the room. Really, you probably should have been in the room with us, but it was very apparent that this person wasn't going to be able to sell our product.
What that's a really good example of is the things that you can't tell from a CV, which is why you have to have the conversations and understand the person behind the paper.
Yeah.
Because a CV only tells you so much. You have to get that feeling from people. I've went on screening calls with candidates I've approached, and on LinkedIn they look amazing. You get a copy of their CV, it's all singing, all dancing. You're rubbing your hands like this is a home run.
Yeah.
I just need to verify that this person is what they say. And you go on the call and you're like, something's not right here. And it's intuition. You get that feeling. Maybe it comes from experience. Probably does, speaking to so many people. You start to get that feeling, you're like, this isn't the right person. But again, that comes from experience, but it also comes from knowing your client. So if you know your client, you know the team, you know the dynamics that work there, you can pick up pretty quickly if somebody's not right. And you have to go with that feeling, because you can't bring someone in if you don't believe that they're going to be the value add and the right person for you.
Today's episode is sponsored by ISX Financial. Most growing businesses end up stitching together multiple providers to run their payments and banking, leaving them exposed to cash flow, reconciliation, and even security issues. ISX Financial delivers a unified ecosystem with multi-currency accounts, online payments, real-time UK and EU transfers, and global mass payout. Within that platform, Paid By provides pay by bank with real-time settlement notifications, automated reconciliation, and integrated refund management. One partner, one integration, helping your business transact with confidence. You can learn more at isx.financial. That's isx.financial. And a big thank you to the team at ISX for supporting the show. So for you, what does make a great recruiter in 2025 is relationships, data, empathy, all of the above?
All of the above. For me personally, I think the relationships and the empathy are a big driver in what you're doing. Data is so present. You have to use your data. You have to use the data points that come up. But you have to understand the person. People tend to forget this is a people business. It's matching people with people. It's companies and candidates is a way to say it. But at the end of the day, it's people. You're working with a hiring manager who has maybe a P&L that they're responsible for. And if they've not got that salesperson, they're maybe losing 40, 50,000 a month by the person not being in seat. So they're under pressure to hire. Then you've got a candidate desperate for a move because they want progression, they want a new opportunity, whatever that may be. It comes down to people. The motivations and the drivers are the underlying reason for people to move. I always say to everyone, look, at the end of the day, I'm not the one that's going to be doing the job. You are. You're going to spend 40, 50 days a week, 40, 50 hours a week rather, doing this. You have to be.
A long week.
I know. It feels like that as a founder. You're the one that's going to be doing this every single day for the next number of years. You have to be right. So you have to understand it from a relationship side, from a people side, and you have to empathise with their situation. Are they a parent? Have they got responsibilities outside of work? What's their lifestyle? How far are they going to be commuting? Is that sustainable? We had someone recently who stayed over towards Bristol. The role was in Essex. Like, I can do that. Like, realistically, are you though? You know, when it gets into the dead of winter and it's snowing, are you going to be going to Essex twice a week? Probably not.
I think as well, it's passion, right? That's one thing we haven't spoken about is passion. That's probably your vibe that you were talking about, right? You speak to people and sometimes they actually have a passion for what they're doing and you want to buy from that. And I think when we speak to people, you can tell if someone is doing it because they just want to move or they want a pay bump or they actually see this as a real opportunity for them. And it's better sometimes to give it to the person who wants the opportunity because they're going to take the opportunity than the person who goes, yeah, I've steered this ship 1,000 times, I can steer it 1,000 more. So I think there is a passion, but then what I'd say as well, there's also, sounds awful, but a brutality to it, right? Our approach is different because Gary goes out and does the initial pull, unless we pull from our network, and we've got quite a strong network. So if we actually have to do the headhunting, not the network pulling, we take a 2-filter approach. So Gary will find them, he'll do the first set of interviews, and then it comes to me and I try to do much more of a technical interview, right? It's not so much an interview, more as a conversation, but you can know if the person has been around what you're talking about or been in it.
But that again is very unique to your experience because you've worked in payments. You can look at a role and be like, I know exactly the sort of things this company are going to ask you, not just on paper, but because I've been there and I've done it.
Yeah.
That is very, very uncommon in payments recruitment.
Very uncommon.
And then we go back, and that's actually the whole idea is what we said is we can find 30 candidates, but we're not going to. Most recruiters will go 30, 12, 8, 6. Okay, we go 5, all pre-vetted, all through us, and similar to payments again. I love this as the same, but we do A/B testing. So whenever we first start with a client, we say we're going to give you smaller batches, just 3 and 3. One is going to be skilled based, the other one is going to be network based. So what we think, and you're going to give us feedback on which ones you like. So then moving forward, we can make sure the process works for you.
Yeah. But if we think of a lot of our kind of listeners now and in our network, people are looking for jobs, right? People are either hiring or they're looking for jobs. Everyone's getting their 2025 bonuses, right? And thinking, right, I'm going to get my pay rise, then we're going to get my bonus and I'm out of here because our pay rise is minimal thanks to inflation. What would be kind of your first piece of advice to someone actively looking for a job right now?
Well, I guess from my perspective, okay, is you have to be active online. Not just active online, you also have to be active at events, right? And it's not just London. There's events in Manchester, Birmingham, Scotland. The younger generation almost don't get this. They go, we have to be active on LinkedIn, and then they never actually go and meet someone. And it sounds awful, but having a beer or a coffee with someone helps you build that personal bond. They're more likely to vouch for you. So I think being active is super important. You know, we're quite busy now with clients. All of them have come via LinkedIn or personal networks. So I think that is super important. But also on the LinkedIn front, please stop just posting AI stuff. Stop taking like Marcel's post and going into Google and say, give me a good response for this, click. Like, people don't really care about that. People care about you. I post stuff about my nan, about my cats, right? About going out. People want to know the person they're buying from or selling to. So for me, that online and event, you've got to do the events and just be yourself. Don't be a robot. So that's my view on it. But
I think I agree entirely with that. You know, you've got to be networked now if you're looking. I think we spoke about applications and the numbers and the volume. If you're networked, you'll create more opportunities for yourself. And the second is something I've already touched on, and it's knowing your own worth and knowing where you want to be and what you want to go for. Because if you're applying for jobs through vanity or because you think it looks good, you're not going to be as successful as if you sit down and be honest with yourself, where you are, where you want to be, and what's going to get you there.
And how often do we see candidates who are on maybe 70k going, oh, can you go and get us 110? And just tell them that we're on 80.
It's just the 23-year-old grads.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Tell me about it. But we have people go, I'm on 80, I want 110. Can you tell them on 95? And that's where we're different because, like I said, we don't care about the transaction. We care about the relationship. So we quite push back and go, look, just so you know, we're representing the client, not you. We think you're a great fit and you will love working at this and you will have a great career. That's your benefit. If you want that higher salary, we won't place you in this role, because if we burn that bridge with the client, we lose the relationship because of greed.
It's quite difficult. I suppose you're playing a very calculated long game, right? Because most recruiters do get paid more if someone's on a higher base salary, right?
certainly is a one-off. But what, as Luke said earlier, we're building long-term relationships.
You let them go after probation.
Yeah, we lose it.
Yeah, don't sack them in the first 6 months. For us, it's about building partnerships. For me, it's never been about transactional placements. I don't think there's a place for that anymore. I think clients want to have someone that they trust, which is why there's a shift from traditional bigger agencies to more boutique style like ourselves, where it's people who are industry experts and who get what you do. And you can pick up the phone and say, Gary, I need 2 account execs. And we know what they want, we know what works for them, we've worked with them before, and it's an easy brief. We can go to market and find the right people for them. Or as I say to my clients, particularly when it's revenue generating roles, I know what you want. If I find someone who fits your criteria, even though you're not hiring, can I bring them to you? And we have the partnership agreement in place so we can. Because let's be honest, if I can bring a great salesperson to a company, they shouldn't be saying
make
no.
It work, right?
Because they'll add positively to the P&L.
I've said it before to recruiters: if you've got a good person, let me talk to them, and then I'll have the fight internally.
But you have to know your client to do that, though.
Yeah.
So that's where the difference between transactional and relationship partnerships come in.
And on the transactional, I'll say the name. You might have to bleep it out. I don't know what the rules are, but if you think about like Braintree, let's put it into a payments terms, right? Braintree went out and all they cared about was the transaction. So they priced the market super low. They went out and just took loads of market share. PayPal get a new CEO in. And what happens suddenly is we need to reprice everything. They lose loads of relationships. So we don't want to play the pricing game, which is we get paid more to essentially help you, but it's not really helping you because you're now in a role that's too senior for you, so you might not succeed, and go against you. It's much better to go, actually, I can get 3 roles off this if I do a good job. Okay, it might be spread over 12 months instead of now. But it's just longer way of thinking, more enterprise way of thinking is probably the best way of saying it.
I think those reprices are common across all the payments. I don't think we need to bleep that out, to be honest with you. But in terms of candidate mistakes, then, what are candidates doing wrong that you see in interviews with their CVs? And I think, do you provide them support around structuring CVs? Because I see some shocking CVs land on my desk when I'm like, how have you looked at that and not even thought about your GCSE projects or your A-level projects and what looked good, right? That looks terrible.
So I'll let Gary ask all of it apart from the CV. So the one thing we do in the CV is we don't structure the CV because then we are changing the person's experience because we have the experience to make it sound well. But what we do is we anonymize the CV and we take out what we think is the gumph, all right? So we don't add to it, but we just strip away from it. So then when we hand it over, we go, here's a very cut down version. Because, I had a smart guy sent me a CV the other day. It was 5 pages. And I ended up having to sit there for about 15, 20 minutes. And I managed to get it down to 1 page. It was 1 page of useful information, 5 pages of a lot of fluff. But aside from the CVs...
I think we've looked at doing that and we have done that. I think for me, a lot of the time, though, it's like, do you coach people for interviews? I don't think you should. Because, you can tell people what is going to be covered. You should help people prepare. You can't coach people. The CV's an insight into a person's mindset.
Here's one thing I would do is I would never hire someone based on what they got in their GCSEs.
No.
I don't think I get people to, I actually say, you're getting through the basic interview step because of us. So just strip off the education bit. If they ask it, they'll ask it. But how often, like, I was a hairdresser, I had a motorbike crash and I started a job in a call centre, and over 12 years I worked my way up to Citibank, right? That there's no degree, there's no university.
I have a thesis on this though, right? Because hairdresser, right? You're talking to people every day. You're having conversations. Some of the best salespeople I've hired, and I worked in bars and nightclubs when I was younger as well, have worked in those bar hospitality roles because you have to deal with difficult customers. You have to talk to people, and it brings you out of your shell, and you get a bit of the gift of the gab about you, which you need in sales roles ultimately. And hairdressing probably very similar, right?
Look, when I left hairdressing, I said I had a motto, right, when I left, which I said, people love to come and see me and tell me everything about their lives, maybe in things they shouldn't be, right? And then the banks would used to call them. Now this is going back 15 years, so this is when the banks would do all the outbound calling all the time. And I remember my mum getting a call, and she would actively avoid them because she was like, all they're trying to do is sell me stuff. And I thought, why can't you take a hairdressing approach to banking where people want to come? Instead of trying to sell them a credit card, you understand that they actually need an insurance. So you can still get a sale, but it's a sale that helps them instead. So I would agree with you. And actually one of the things that I did in my mentorship before was actually helping people that maybe had a non-traditional background to try and get those junior level roles. So
nice. I think to go back to the original question about mistakes people are making, a big point is they don't put the focus on themselves and what they've been doing.
Yeah.
You see a lot of talk about group work and collaboration, which is great to have. It's good to know you can work well in a team, but I want to know what you've done. You know, what was your role in that? Did you lead? Did you follow? What was your outcome? As Luke said, we spoke to someone about tenders. They were part of the process. They weren't delivering it. So I want to know what you've done, because that's when you go in, it's on you. So people often talk about the group rather than the self. I don't know if that's British humility or that's maybe a broader cultural issue. But certainly when I've done a lot of work in the States in the past few years, salespeople over there are very quick to tell you everything great that they've done as an individual.
Well, you can use LinkedIn for this, right, as well. The CV can be high level, and you can have projects that you can tag on LinkedIn. Now you can go into the more detailed stuff around, this is actually what I did here, this is an award I won here, right? Like, I'm always going to go on someone's LinkedIn profile because, you know, that demand generation stuff we're very passionate about, and it's done very well for us in recent years particularly. But, you know, if I go on someone's LinkedIn profile and it's just completely blank, there's none of that information, you know, particularly, you know, commercial roles where they're going to be using that as a sales tool, and then I see they've got 400 connections, and I'm like, okay, this is concerning.
By the way, I love that, right? Because like I said, we can be a bit brutal sometimes. We had a young guy, he's in a commercial role, he refuses to update his LinkedIn, and then he's come back to us 3 times now going, have you found us a role yet? And I every time say the same thing, I have not looked for a role for you, and I will not look for a role for you until that count is above 500 and you have a profile picture. Doing an occasional reshare and like with no engagement, no activity. It's 2025. You're going to have to sell through LinkedIn.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So when we move kind of to advice to employers as opposed to employees, where do you think the hiring process is going wrong when they're trying to find candidates?
My personal opinion on this is that, and this is no shade at internal, right? I think internal does a great job, but again, quite often you'll have someone internal who's disconnected from the actual sales process, who's disconnected from the product, having to lead the sales. So I think there's an element of shifting CVs. So I think there's been a big shift to cost saving moving internally. I don't think there is an actual cost saving. I think if you actually have to factor in the hours spent for your 5-part interview, or your 7 interviews in one day, it's when you actually have to factor in the wages of the people doing that, it's cheaper to use an agency. It's a myth to say that it's cheaper. Internally, it's more expensive. You have to factor in the staff costs, which no one does. So I think that's one issue. I also think we see it a lot, unfortunately for us, good for the recruitment market, is people go, I've already got a recruiter. I've already worked with these people, so I now won't move. And they go, well, have they done a good job for you? Well, 75% stays. Well, that's a rubbish, mate. If I had 75% of my payments fail, my business is going under, right? Unless I'm in the ultra high risk area. So I think over-reliance on internal and not being honest about the costings of it and the speed to market. You know, I've been hired for a role that took 6 months. And then I also think the over-reliance of existing recruiters, even if they're not doing a good job for you, I think they're my 2 biggest bugbears. But
no, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think there's a lot of stall between CVs coming in and interview rounds, and I think it's because they're not communicating effectively. You know, you want to maintain the process. People should be coming in, and it should be quick, even if it is 5 stages. You know, it should be known that there's going to be 5 stages. It should be known that it's going to take X amount of time. And I think that's where a lot of candidates get lost and a lot of bad experiences come up, because there's not a set out standard of this is how we're going to do it. You know, that should be communicated between the recruiter, internal or external, and the hiring team to say, we'll get you CVs, we need feedback in the CVs within 48 hours. Is that okay? Yes. Right. Next step, interviews. We're going to have interviews at this time. Is there any reason you can't do that? Maybe at a conference. Okay, we need to work around that. But it's all about communication. You need to plan it out. You know, we spoke to someone the other day who said, we need someone in the new year. And we were actually reverse engineered from the potential start date. They should have started hiring a month earlier.
Yeah.
You know, and when you start to look at the timescales and manage people through that, they can see actually we need to plan it better.
Yeah.
I think if you plan it better,
people have a better experience, and it's a lot more successful.
You get finance teams, shelving roles and impacting stuff there, right? I was going to ask you guys a question around, we've both worked in payments for 15, 16 years, and, we would probably openly say there's certain recruiters that we know and trust and we've worked with in the past. There's some where we've had bad experiences and we wouldn't go to them. But your point of view as a new entrant, people, you're very well networked, but you are ultimately going after some of these sticky relationships, right? Where they're going to pick up the phone to that recruiter that they know and trust. How do you tap into that part of the market, which is probably that high level, like C-suite, right? Like that's where you want to be playing as well, I presume.
I think, right, there's two elements to it, right? Which is, I guess, fortunately, because of the level that I've been at, if we're going for our kind of target market, I would be reporting to SVP or the CEO. So these are relationships that I've already got. So I'm not really worried about it. I also know that they're starting a business that I've been at the top of the market of. So why wouldn't they want to speak to you? So I think there's that element of it. I'd also say we don't need to speak to a lot of people. So I think probably we've spoken to, in 5 months, we've actually had full discovery conversations with 12 clients and we've won 9 of them. So our win rate is like exceptional, because I think people, like to your point when we started, we're the only ones doing this, right? So you've got a choice. You can say, okay, I've worked with these guys for 10 times. They've delivered me 8 roles that are spectacular. But then there's also the fear of doubt of going, well, if I had used someone else, could the person who's delivering me 300 actually have delivered me 500K? So and you just got to be direct. I literally write to people going, I have worked with the clients that you're looking to service. It's worth having a chat. I don't do any recruitment patter, anything like that. And then before you know it, they message back saying, let's go on. I said, our biggest issue is actually we reject some clients because we had a SaaS-based company. I had no idea. I said to them, we would literally be a generic recruiter for you here. There's other people that have got more experience. And we actually suggested a recruit that we knew that did a good job who kind of had 15 years in that experience. So how often do you hear like talent people rejecting a deal? It would never happen. But I just said to Gary, we're going to waste time on this and it's not our speciality.
I see a lot of businesses say, we're working exclusively for a client. It doesn't really mean much in my eyes when I see you're working exclusively. So
yeah, but also how often do you see, we see, it drives me nuts, but I see recruiters online going, I'm phenomenal, I can get you salespeople, and then the next day they're posting up, I have 5 SDR roles, if you want to reach out to me, let me know. I'm like, well, great headhunting there, great business development, a LinkedIn post. It's like, what is the value you're adding to your client if it's just going to be inbound? Like my view is, it should be outbound. You should be reaching out to your established network, and if you don't have them in your established network, then headhunting it. That said, I will give credit. I won't say the person's name, but there is one girl that does the kind of just post on her thing, but she also does a video with it and she explains the role. So there's kind of a happy meet in the middle. We're far over here on the right, she's in the middle, but too often I think I see people just posting up, got an FX, or they just post the JD and just reshare it.
That video outbound stuff's interesting. It does feel more personable when someone's done a video.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm more likely to probably watch that than a generic message these days.
The best, this is the secret sauce that I'll give to everybody, is the power of the voice note. Because if you've got a voice note, the people can't see what it is. So natural curiosity. So if you can get your message delivered in 20 seconds, people respond to a voice note, even if they go, not interested, they'll still respond. They don't ghost you.
At least you know it's a no.
Yeah.
So as we get to the final segment of the show, my favourite bit of the show, Luke, Gary, we want to know kind of what would you bring from a shelf of shame perspective? What frustrates you the most in the world of recruitment and payments that you never want to see again, banished forever?
Yes, we were thinking about this on the way in. I know you had a strong one that you were wanting to share.
You have one each. It's fine.
Yeah, you go. You
go.
It's Christmas. Yeah, it's Christmas. Yeah. Thanks, gents. Look, I think for me, it's a lack of passion and knowledge, right? So I would shelve 100% the generic JDs where the people don't know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're doing, because it's so boring, right? What am I looking at? What am I reading? I think JDs need to be targeted to the role that you're going for. And I don't think it can just be a basic LinkedIn shit. I think there needs to be some passion behind it, some knowledge about it. And look, that's why we set up the business. So the thing that we're shelving is the fact that we don't know what we're talking about. The thing that it's almost like what we're shelving is the thing that we're also adding, which is we hate the fact that people don't know anything. how can you have an entire industry where you don't know the thing you're hiring for? And we're changing that by going, we actually know what we're hiring for. You're not going to get me to go and sell a compliance role because I don't know it, right? So I'd shelve the lack of knowledge and probably, in truth, lack of caring. It's just job. We've moved from I think what I actually said to you was, I hate the transactional element of it. I hate the fact that I'm going to lie to you, the candidate, to try and get you in, and I'm going to lie to you, the customer, to try and get them in. Not all the time, but sometimes, where instead of just going, look, let's just be black and white, we'll just get the best person for the role, even if it takes 2 weeks longer.
It's gone from consultative to hard sell.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's mine.
Okay then, Gary, your turn. What are you nominating for the Shelf of Shame?
I think to nominate for the Shelf of Shame, it's been a bugbear for years. I know it was a bugbear for Luke's when he was in the candidate market as well, and it's a lack of transparency when it comes to compensation and benefits. You know, how often do you see a great job advertised, no mention of salary? Yeah. And I think it's quite an underhand tactic. You can understand maybe why a business does it, but I think you're better being honest. Just, you know what you want to offer. You have an approved budget. Let's be honest about it from the outset, so people know what they're applying for.
You have to wait till like the third round as well to find out what the actual job's paying.
It's all those cloak and dagger conversations that you need to have out. What are you on? What would you be looking for? This is the budget.
The other thing I've saw creep in that area is the total comp. Like this role will pay, but it includes the comp. Yeah. And you're like, but how much is the basic and how much is the comp?
There is one provider that is notorious for this, and I had an account manager job come up, and I was like, 210,000 for an account manager job base, that's crazy. And only once I actually know someone that applied for it, they're like, no, it's massively inflated, the role is £80,000, it's 100% OTA, and they've put in non-awarded equity within that as well. And I was like,
in dollars as well.
I was like, how can you advertise that? It's like, it's shameful, and I think you should have no shame. If you're hiring for a BDM and you're only willing to pay a BDA salary, advertise a BDA.
Yeah.
It's not.
I think it's a really, really good point. Businesses are so scared. They think they won't attract top talent if they don't put in big numbers, so they choose not to put in anything.
A great example of it is in the past 3 years, I've done a lot of recruitment work in the US, and it's law in states like New York and California that you have to show the salary.
That's good.
And you have to show you can keep the total comp to yourself, but you have to show at least the base. And the difference in the conversation that you have, because it's transparent, people know what they've applied for. So when it comes to actually making an offer, you can say, well, the role was 100k, we're offering you 100k and this is the package on top.
Nice.
Nobody's then saying, oh, but I wanted 120. You've known from the outset what it was. So it's just so much easier, and I think it means everybody's on the same page going into the process.
People should talk about their benefits more as well, though, because we've gone from startups to corporates, out of corporates, back in start. Like the difference in things like pension contribution is massive. Like, and it is an appeal if you have that conversation with a candidate. I was
about to say,
there's some banks out there that pay 15-20% people's pension.
Equity with startups as well. Equity may be available.
Yeah, let's not go down that road.
I think we've probably all been burned with that.
All right, guys. Well, look, it's been a brilliant conversation. Really, really enjoyed this today. Where can people get in touch, find out more about what you guys are doing and how they can work with you?
So we've got our website, howyadoing.io. So nice and simple. Find both of us on LinkedIn. And then my email is just lbarry@howyadoing.io, and yours is
gburns@howyadoing.io.
Yeah, so just reach out. I
think
think
follow what we're up to on LinkedIn as well. There's cat and nan pictures.
Yeah.
Plenty from Luke.
And look, I always say to people, if you want to have a chat about your business and payments, right, we're not tying you to a contract. So it's like the amount of people that we just speak with, especially from anything from talent to the actual what they're doing with their product. So have a conversation. There's nothing more I enjoy more. Even better than speaking to clients is speaking to payments companies, trying to service clients. That's where my passion is. So yeah, just reach out.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.